I wasn't sure what to talk about in today's podcast, and I was kind of I sat there for a moment thinking about different things I could talk about. I went through my notes of podcast ideas I've had over time. I looked through my voice memos in the past of just ideas I've had. I was like, I want to talk about something very relevant. I don't know. I just felt this call to speak to something that I feel like a lot of people are going through right now. And I had this epiphany. A lot of people are struggling with tough conversations. So I want to make this episode all about tough conversations, about the philosophy of saying no and why every yes has a price. With every yes, you pay a price. There is a consequence to every yes, and there is a consequence to every no as well, but we'll get into that. So I want to talk about tough conversations today because I see a lot of commentary about it. Every time I do a live Q&A call with my coaching clients, with my consulting clients, this gets brought up a lot. A lot of the time, people ask me a question that they already know the answer to. They're like, what do I say in response to this? And it's a client that has said something about their price or said something about their service, and they say they're not sure what to say and they're looking for my advice. And the answer is always so simple. It is always so succinct and so straightforward that you would struggle to believe that these people don't already know the answer for themselves. The reason is they're scared. They're shying away from a tough conversation. And look, tough conversations are tough. Go figure. Who would have thought? But you need to look at every answer, every action, every idea, and everything that you do in your business. You need to look at the path outcomes. You need to be able to have a projected vision into the future and say, okay, this is where you draw a line in the sand or you're at a fork in the road. If I say yes to this, I'm going down this path, which is going to take me in a very different direction to if I say no to this. What is that going to look like? I especially think back to my early days of business where I would just say yes to every single opportunity that came my way because it comes from, that deep-rooted sense of just wanting to please everyone and not wanting to disappoint everyone, but also fearing what may happen if you just say no to someone or push back on something. It's often, you're not scared of the thing. You're not scared of what someone will actually do or what the consequence of you saying no is, but you're scared about the what if. You're scared like, what if I say no to this person and then they don't like me, or they don't recommend me to their friends, or they leave a bad review, or they're not happy with the price if we're talking about pricing. All of these things running through your head a million miles an hour when you're in a decision-making process, that's what stalls people. It's what turns people into deer in the headlights. And it's what prohibits people from taking the next step in their business and also their life, because I like to think that business and your personal life are very intertwined. They're very parallel to one another. So, and I've said it before, like how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you have full control and autonomy over your life, I'm sure you do in your business as well, but how many of us really have it together in our personal life, right? Not many. And if you do, I envy you. But back to what I was saying. Every tough conversation you have, every tough decision you have to make is a fork in the road. And now the comfortable route, which is probably the one you're already traveling on, is going to take you in a very different direction to if you take the uncomfortable route. And it's a very, very stark contrast between the two. Yes and no are polar opposite, and so they carry polar opposite outcomes. Okay, now if you take the comfortable route, if you keep traveling down that very comfortable path of least resistance route in your business journey, you're going to chug along, you're going to be comfortable, it's going to feel okay, but you reach a certain point where, and this is what happened with me, reach a certain point of contempt and complacency. And it's not a good feeling. And that feeling and that position comes from the inability to say no and the inability to have tough conversations. So, I was in a position in my business a couple of years ago where I had a team that I wasn't overly happy with. I had some good players, I had some great team members, but I also had a lot of people that I just was not happy with. And I always say this to people. I always say, you teach your customers how to treat you. And now, sorry, I just hit my microphone. It probably made a weird sound. So you teach your customers how to treat you. The same can be said about your staff. You teach your staff how to treat you. Okay? If you treat your staff as a scared, timid boss, someone that's scared to speak up because they're scared of what the outcome may be, they have this irrational fear of what if, then eventually your staff will lose respect for you. They'll start doing whatever they want. They'll start adding a bit of extra time onto their timesheets. They'll start taking liberties in their work. They'll backchat you. They'll have an attitude. They'll rock up a little bit later to work. They'll do all of these things because you taught them to be that way. You weren't able to put on your big boss pants and your big boss hat and your big boss shoes and lay out the ground rules and tell people how it is. Now, I was like that for 3 years, so I'm not going to sit here on a pedestal and tell everyone that they're doing it wrong and I've been doing it right. I had to do it wrong for long enough to realize that I was doing it wrong and learn what was right. The main thing was I was so scared to have a tough conversation with an employee because I was so scared of what if. And there were certain personalities that I had in the team where I was like, I had to have that conversation with them about something that was tough. I had to talk to them about the quality of their work or their punctuality or just their overall attitude and presentation. But because of how they were, because of their personality type, I was so scared to have that conversation because I didn't want someone to raise their voice at me. Like, so what? Let's look at the outcome of that. Okay, if we have a tough conversation in this moment, if I have a tough conversation with a client and they raise their voice at me, but in me doing that, the long-term effect of that, the long-term ripple effect is good. You know, we overcome this hurdle or get over this bump that has caused us to get to this point where we have to have a tough conversation. For example, we address late payments. So I've had customers that, they start paying late. At first they pay on time, but then it starts to be like 2 to 3 days after. And then after a while, because I've had clients for 6 years straight now, after a while you get clients that pay after a couple of months. I've got one client in particular who, she was my 4th client ever back in 2020. So we've been cleaning for her for 6 years. And over time, her payments just got worse and worse and worse to the point where she was literally like 4 invoices behind on a fortnightly clean. So, do the math. That's 2 months behind on all of her payments all the time. And I was so scared to just call her up on the phone and, have a perceivably tough conversation with her and be like, it seems like payments are behind. Could you please make sure that these are paid on time? There may have to be late fees, blah, blah, blah. But I was so scared to do that because all these irrational things were flowing through my head. Like, this is one of my original customers. I don't want to upset my original customers because I go back to that time when I was so desperate to get these people that I would bend over backwards for them and do whatever it took to get the customer. I took myself back to my old self, back to Jason at 18, 19 years old. I'm like, I almost, it's like I was entering that psychology again. I was entering that state of mind again. And I got scared. I got cold feet. Even now, when I'm super far removed from the business and I haven't even seen that person in years, and they've been paying me for years and years, and I just had this irrational fear of, what if I call them and they get upset with me and they get snarky with me and they have an excuse and all these things going through my head. But then one day I was like, enough is enough. I'm sick of seeing this overdue balance on this person's thing and seeing on Xero their average time to pay is like 2 months. I'm like, I'm just going to address it. I'm going to text her, and if that doesn't work, I'll just call her up. So I texted her, got a response, and it was like, yeah. A couple of days went by. I checked it again. The invoices hadn't been paid. So I called her up, and I just had what I thought would be a tough conversation with her, something that I had been avoiding for a couple of years at that point. And lo and behold, guess what? It wasn't actually hard at all. It was a very easy conversation. She apologized. That was that. We got it sorted. Now she pays on time. What was I so scared of? Why was I letting that go for so long? And I see I'm guilty of it, but I see a lot of other people in Facebook groups, in my school community, in my Q&A calls. They have these irrational fears of tough conversations and making tough decisions because they're scared of an outcome or a possibility that they've come up with in their own head that could happen, but rarely ever does. And like I said, you have to look at every decision as a fork in the road. If I just kept letting that continue because I was scared of what might happen if I had the conversation. I would keep traveling down this path where the payments just get slower and slower. And as I grow the business, I invite more people to do that. I invite more people to act like that. And because I've become so used to it as a business owner, I just allow it more and more to the point where cash flow becomes worse and worse over time. And all of a sudden, I'm stuck in a negative cycle where I've got poor cash flow. I can't pay my staff on time. I can barely afford to pay my bills. I can't even pay myself, let alone myself. I can't pay myself a thing. And it all happened because I didn't have a tough conversation a few years back. And I was teaching people that they could treat me like that. I was teaching people that they could be slow on payments. I was teaching staff that they could be late to cleans. All of this was because I chose the comfortable route on the path. Now, I don't know about you. In my opinion, in my ethos, in my worldview when it comes to business, is that nothing that is worth having or nothing that is good comes from being comfortable or easy. So I got to the point where I am now. And look, I by no means made it. I don't consider myself successful yet. I know I'm on the way there. I know exactly how I need to get there, but I don't consider myself successful yet. I am more successful than other people. I have achieved a degree of success, yes, but I by no means, by my own standards, achieved success. However, I just want to say I'm at the point where I am now because I made a lot of tough decisions earlier. Now, they were decisions I put off for a long time. It's taken me quite a long time to get to where I am now. People don't actually realize, like, I've been doing this for 6 years, okay? The first 3 years, they were okay. The first 2 years weren't great. The third year, I did okay. Fourth, fifth year, much better. Sixth year, we're off to the races. But it took me quite a while. 6 years is still a relatively short amount of time, but I see so many other people who, they say they look up to me. They say they follow me and they've learned so much from me. And then I look at what they're doing and they've achieved the same amount of success I've achieved in 2 years, in like 6 months. And they're coming to me like, oh, I feel stuck. I don't know what to do. I don't think I'm doing it right. I think I'm struggling. I think maybe I'm not cut out for this. I'm like, man, you have done this 4 times faster than I have. You got to the same point I was 2 years in 1/4 of time. I'm like, you got to put things into perspective. Let's just learn to delay gratification a little bit. Let's just pump the brakes. Just chill out. Things are going to be okay. But anyway, I would say without a doubt, the biggest catalyst for the last 3 years of my journey, the first 3 years were okay, but the following 3 years after that were rapid. It was the growth was rapid. And I would say the biggest catalyst for that was that I started to step out of my comfort zone. The first 3 years, I was way too comfortable. Things were good. Things were not great. If you listen to my podcast episode about good is the enemy of great, that's exactly where I was. I was in that realm of good, and everything felt good because this was all new to me. I'd never had a business before, or a proper business before. I'd never had a job. Things felt good, and I was quite happy there. But then I started to get hungrier. I was like, what can I really make of myself? How can I leverage my position now and take myself to new heights? And I just said, I got into a cleaning business, first of all, because I couldn't get a job. And I couldn't get a job because I had no experience. I dropped out of school at 14 and I had no people skills because, I never had friends. I left school really young. And so I couldn't land an interview because I was just so bad at talking to people. So I was like, all right, I'll just create a job for myself. If I can clean houses, make 60, 70K a year, I'll be super happy. So I went into this role because I thought it would be comfortable. I didn't even want to step out of my comfort zone then and just do something that I thought might be a little bit tough for me. Like even just working in retail or hospitality, because I was so scared of what if. I was so scared of dealing with people face to face, knowing that I wasn't great socially and I didn't have good people skills. So I took the path of least resistance for me. I took the comfortable route. And look, I ended up doing all right in the end, but I started with that bad mentality. I started with that mindset of comfort. I just wanted to be comfortable. I didn't want to do the hard thing. And despite that, there were still some challenges in the beginning, but I definitely took the most comfortable path of least resistance route when I started my business. And that's why for the first 3 years, I didn't achieve the amount of success I could have if I just stepped out of my comfort zone a bit and did what I had to do. And how about this quote? What you allow is what will continue. And I love that. You can spin that in so many different ways. I allowed myself to keep thinking that I was socially awkward, not great with people, and unlikable. And so what ensued? What continued? I continued to think that I was this unlikable loser with no social skills, and all of my interactions were kind of a domino effect of that mentality and that mindset. And so, do you think I had any success with people? Do you think I built friendships during that period? Do you think I had good relationships during that period? No, because I was allowing that whole thought process and these limiting beliefs to overwhelm me, and it meant that I was allowing that to continue as a byproduct. Same thing can be said in business. If we allow customers to treat us poorly, if we allow customers to walk all over us, that is what's going to continue. And if we disallow ourselves to do things that we know are going to propel us forward because we're too scared to do it, like when I started my business in the first 3 months, I had no customers and made no money. All I could have done, like if I simply just picked up the phone and cold called a few places or knocked on some doors in some neighborhoods, I could have had a customer within an hour. But it took me 3 months because I was scared to do the uncomfortable thing and do what I knew would work just because I was scared of the what if. Like what? Why was I so irrationally scared about making a phone call or knocking on a door? Because I was scared that someone might hang up on me or close the door on my face? Like really? We put it in a perspective like that. And it just seems so silly. So instead of just doing something a little bit tough for me personally at the time, I instead chose to wait 3 months to make any amount of money. And that's the distinction. That is the problem here. And that's what we need to overcome as people and as business owners. And so just remember that next time you're in that situation where you're talking to a customer or an employee and you're in that place where you're at a fork in the road and you know that you can either make a tough decision or an easy one and be taken down 2 different paths. Look at the different outcomes, project into the future, look at what can happen either way. Think about the possibilities, sure. Think about what could happen, but don't dwell on that too much. Just think ahead. A lot of business owners are really bad at delaying gratification and they're really bad at looking into the future. It's why most people don't play the long game. It's why most people aren't willing to reinvest money into themselves in the business, and thus they slowly kind of just dwindle and fade away and die over time. People just aren't good at having foresight. A lot of business owners lack foresight. So next time you're at that fork in the road, just think about, have consciousness of what you're doing. Have awareness and be like, am I taking the easy route? And is that going to serve me? And is that going to benefit me the way it needs to? Or should I take the uncomfortable route and do what I know I need to do to get myself to where I really want to be? Okay. It's the same thing with a simple yes or no. Even if a customer comes to you and they ask you to, you can rock up to a clean and the customer might ask you, hey, while you're here, could you just clean these couple of windows? It'd probably only take a couple of minutes. Most people just say yes because they get uncomfortable. They get put off. No, stand your ground, make an uncomfortable decision, have a little discussion with the client, educate them on why you can't do that, and educate them on why your service offering and the inclusions are firm and very static and they can't just be changed without a certain amount of notice. And then you can go back to the drawing board. And if it's something like that, you can be like, okay, this happened. How can I prevent this from happening again? I have so many moments like that where something will happen in the business. I'm like, how can I prevent this from happening again? Good example is we had a great cleaner. She did her 3 weeks of training and she was great and we hired her. And then her first week solo, not even the end of the week, she was like, how do I wash my cloths? And we're like, oh, you just wash them yourself. And she was like, oh, I don't have a washing machine or dryer. And we were like, what? How do you survive? How do you have clothes on your body? But anyway, so that all happened. We had to compromise. I had to give her more money as an allowance so she could use a laundromat. But then I just went back to the drawing board. I'm like, how can I prevent this from happening again? And so guess what I did? I made it so that in the interviewing process, in the screening process, the interviewer has to ask a question, do you have a washing machine and dryer? And if so, are you okay with washing cloths and mop heads and stuff in said washing machine and dryer? And they're like, yeah, of course. Cool. Okay. You're through to the next stage. Simple. So, Just things like that. You go back to the drawing board. You have a little failure. You have a little hiccup. There's a little road bump. There's a little hurdle you have to overcome. You get through it. And then the next thing you should do is, how can I prevent this from happening again? How do I make sure that this doesn't continue? How do I make sure lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place? Things like that. And so it's the same thing with, yes or no. If I say no now, what is that going to mean in future? If I say yes now, what is that going to mean for me? And have awareness in the moment. Have a think about if you're taking the comfortable route or the uncomfortable route. And just remember, nothing in life or in business that's worth having or that is good or that is great is going to be comfortable. It's going to be easy. Okay? The average person is the average person because they're just living life comfortably. And actually, the average person in this day and age is probably not living comfortably at all. But they're in an uncomfortable position because they've lived life with comfort. A lot of people are unhappy with their health, with weight, with friendships and all sorts of things. And a lot of the time, the answer is simple. Like, I had a lot of fit friends and I was unfit for a while, and I would like make comments about it and they're just like, oh, just eat better, just go to the gym more. And I was like, it's not that simple. But it was. And then I did it and I got fit and I was like, okay. So I just had to get uncomfortable for a bit. I just had to step out of my comfort zone and do something I don't normally do, and then get into a routine of it and get into a habit. And then eventually I got to where I wanted to be. It wasn't overnight. It took months and months and months, and it was tough, but I got there because nothing that's worth having in life is going to be easy. If everyone could have a six-pack and the body of their dreams tomorrow, then we all would. But the reason we all don't is because it's tough, okay? But despite that, everyone still desires it. So why don't we all have it? Because it's not easy. Simple as that. Same thing in business. Everyone wants to have a successful business. Nobody opens a business wanting or expecting to fail. Everyone thinks they're going to be great at it. Everyone thinks that their idea is better than the next one. Everyone thinks that they're a nicer person than others. They think they'll be able to treat people better and keep people longer and all this stuff. And guess what? Doesn't work like that. I thought that I was a great person and I had a kind heart and I wasn't going to be like other business owners and other bosses, because everyone has a horror story about their manager and their old boss and how they're the worst person ever. And I'm like, oh, why can't bosses just treat people better? Because it's so easy. Like, it's harder to replace someone. It's easier to keep someone and keep them happy. I feel like it's not that hard. And then you become a business owner and you're like, okay, I get it now. People bend the truth a bit. People are lazy. People are incompetent. They do the wrong thing and then they blame their boss when they get fired or whatever it is. Okay? It shapes you as a person. And I'm a very different person today than I was, 6 years ago. And it's because I stepped out of my comfort zone. I did a lot of uncomfortable things. I did a lot of things that I didn't associate with my character, with my identity at the time. A lot of people will say things like, oh, I just can't do that. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not a mean person. I can't talk to someone like that. I just can't have a tough conversation with someone because I'm really shy. I'm really introverted. Okay, then don't be. What do you mean? What do you mean you're introverted? What's an introvert? Oh, it's someone that's shy socially. Okay, don't be shy. Go talk to a stranger. Say hi to them. Ask them how their day's going. Why is that so hard? Is that impossible for you to do? It's like, no, but for some reason we attach these identities to ourselves that are it's just beyond reality. It doesn't make any sense. We've just trapped ourselves inside our own psyche, and I did that for a long time. I was like, I'm this introverted guy, I can't talk to people. Like, I struggle, walking into a party, and if I'm not with someone I know, then I just kind of sit in the corner quietly and wait for it to be over. But now I'm someone that I go to networking events. I'm like the life of the party. I talk to a lot of new people. I make friends every day. I go on TV. I've gone on radio. I'm on TikTok now. I do a podcast. Things that I never thought I'd ever do in my life because I had this identity, and really an identity crisis. I had attached these beliefs and these labels and these characteristics to myself that were just not true. And I just had to get uncomfortable. I just had to reassess myself and be like, who am I now? Where do I want to be? And who do I need to become in order to get to where I need to be? And then I reverse engineered and worked my way backwards. I'm like, okay, I need to get better at talking on the phone. I need to be okay with picking up the phone and answering the phone. Fun fact, when I put Stacey in her management role, she added $200,000 a year to the business in like the next 30 to 60 days of running the business, just because she started picking up the phone and answering it. I got all of my customers at that point from online quotes that booked either in-person quotes or I just quoted them over email. I had this irrational fear of picking up the phone. I don't know why. To this day, I don't know why. I'm fine with it now, but I had this irrational fear back then of picking up the phone and not knowing what was on the other side of that call. And so as soon as Stacey went in, she started picking up the phone because it would ring like 20 times a day and I just wouldn't answer it. And guess what? Because she picked the damn phone up, we got a lot of customers and those customers were worth a lot of money. And Stacey was like, "You were really leaving a lot of money on the table." And I was like, "Yeah, you don't say." So I had to overcome a lot of false beliefs. I had to recreate my own identity, which is no easy feat. But like I said, nothing in life that's worth having is going to be easy. And that transcends into all other areas of your life and business. It comes down to saying yes and saying no. Every yes has a consequence. And it can be easy. It can be hard. But at the end of the day, do you know what's right for you? Do you make decisions now where you do it in the moment and then you go home later that night and you're like, I wish I just had the courage to say what I really wanted to say. I really just wish I stuck with my guns or trusted my gut. I wish I just gave them the actual price and didn't shy away from it because they seemed like an intimidating person and they said that their budget was a concern. I wish I just stuck to my guns and said what I knew I needed to say. But now I'm going to go and ask a Facebook group what they think I should say. And then they're going to tell me exactly what I know I need to say. And then I'm not going to do it. I'm just hoping that I can shout out there into an echo chamber my problems and my concerns, and everyone else is going to agree with me. And I'll find solace in that, knowing and thinking that everyone else is in the same boat as me. Okay, I hate that mentality. I detest that. I hate when people, this happens a lot in the Facebook groups. It's like these echo chambers of negativity and like this victim mentality where they go in there and they post something and they're like, "Oh, woe is me. I can't do this. I can't do that. Customers are terrible. My staff are terrible." And then they just get a flood of comments where everyone's like, "Oh, that's why I chose to be a solo cleaner. That's why I got rid of all my staff." You know, all of this stuff. And it just reaffirms what they already believe and it validates the feelings that they have. And they know they're going to get that reception, which is why they make those posts. It's so funny. If people I've commented on so many posts where they say something like that, and then you tell them how it is. You're like, "No, actually, it's on you. It's on you to make that decision. You just need to step up and say this or do that." And then they get defensive. They're like, "Well, I can't because da-da-da-da. Oh, I can't do that because," what do you mean you can't? You know what I mean? I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but I'm so passionate about about that sort of mentality, that victim mentality where everyone just wants to see other people doing as poorly as them so they can feel like they're not alone. Okay? I hate that about business. I hate that about a lot of business owners. I don't hate them as people, but I definitely hate the mentality and like that herd mentality of everything sucks, circumstances suck, we can't do anything about it. This is just how it is. But hey, we're all in this together. No. Okay. Be the catalyst for your own change and step outside of your comfort zone. And I think a good perspective and, well, really a reality shift is moving away from thinking that everything is personal to just reframing it as a simple question with no emotion attached to it. Like if a customer says something about the quality of a clean, it's not personal. So don't get defensive about it. Don't get emotional, even if it seems like it is emotionally charged, even if it seems like it's personal. Just pretend like it's not. Simple perspective shift. Just start pretending like nothing is personal and respond like ChatGPT. Respond like a robot. Better yet, respond as a robot. Just paste the message that the customer sends you into ChatGPT or whatever the interaction was and just say, how would you respond to this as a humanoid robot devoid of any emotion that wants to strengthen a customer relationship or strengthen a relationship with a staff member or whatever it is. Just take emotion out of it, have the uncomfortable conversation and see just how easy it really is. And then you can start making better decisions. You can start being known as a firm but reasonable person rather than someone who is impressionable, you can walk all over them and they're an emotional wreck. You don't want to be that person. You want to be the firm but reasonable and fair boss, or service provider, or whatever it is, or friend. You can even use this in your life. And so just have that simple reframe of, this isn't anything personal. This is not an attack. This is just a question. If a customer questions you about price, it's not personal. Treat it as a question. How would you answer this if you were a robot that didn't have any emotions and nothing mattered? Okay? Tough to do as a human being that's full of emotion. We are the most emotional creatures on the planet. But as a business owner, you can't be emotional. The only time you can be emotional is when you're showing joy and enthusiasm and passion about what you do. You can't show emotions like contempt and complacency and fear and anger and disgust and sadness and all these things. You can't do that. Show the positive emotions, okay? And just remember that you need to learn to delay gratification, okay? Saying no equals saying yes to something greater. Think about the fork in the road. If you say yes, if you do the comfortable thing, if you do the thing that you don't want to do, but you just want to keep the peace and, keep the customer happy and be a people pleaser, think about where that takes you. In the grand scheme of things, it's probably not steering you in the right direction for you and your business and where you really want to go. So, say no. Say yes to something greater. Say yes to your future, the one that you really want to build. Get firm on who you really are, what your business really does, what your service is, okay? Step out of your comfort zone, reframe things, shift your identity. The identity shift is the most important thing here. If you consider yourself a pushover, if you consider yourself an introvert, whatever it may be, whatever labels that have been given to you by someone else or a teacher in your school or a friend or a family member, I rebuke that. And I implore you to rebuke that for yourself. There is no label that is strong enough or attached to you that is too much for you to be able to have an identity shift that can steer you in the direction that you want to go. So, very important thing to remember. And boundaries as well. When it comes to boundaries, a lot of people struggle with boundaries. Boundaries are brand building tools. They're brand building tools. So when you draw a line, you shape your brand identity. You can draw a line when it comes to your service offering. Like I said, you can be very firm on what your service is and what you offer. And so we've done that at Enhanced Cleaning. We've been very firm about what we do and don't do. And we've become an authority. And, people don't question us on what we do. If we say no to something, they're not going to be like, oh, could you just clean a few windows while you're here? Can you clean an oven? No, we're very firm about what we do. We convey that through our messaging and our website and our marketing. And, when we have conversations with clients, we are very firm on this stuff. We're very firm on our policies, our payment policies, our late cancellation policies. All these different things is because we have clear-cut boundaries. We have drawn a line in the sand and we're shaping our brand identity in an authoritative, I don't know how to say that word, whichever one's right. And we're positioning ourselves as a proper business, one of prestige, one that, knows what it's doing, and one that is not to be reckoned with. Okay? I'll tell you a funny story about, just how silly I was, and I can say this now because this is in the past, but it was just so silly. Like I was in the Gold Coast once, and I would have been 16. So I was in the Gold Coast with my dad for some event, and then I was like, "Hey, Dad, I want to." Actually, no, I was 18, I think. 17 or no, I was 17. Okay, and I was like, "Dad, I want to stay in the Gold Coast for a couple of days by myself and just explore and just see what it's like to live on my own for a little bit." And he was like, "Okay." So he let me stay in the apartment we were staying in for an extra 2 days, and I was going to pay him back for that. And, the 2 days were up, and my dad was like, he's always been really overprotective and scared. And he was like, all right, I'm going to send a car to pick you up from the hotel. I'm like, okay. And it was going to drive me to the airport, and I'd hop straight on a plane because he was so terrified of something happening to me when I was 17. And he still kind of is. He always worries. But, great dad. But anyway, he sent a car for me. And what I didn't realize is that he'd sent a limo. Okay, before you think that I'm like a trust fund baby, a Nepo baby, whatever, he had a trade deal with this limo company. Like he's an optometrist, and he'd like given glasses to this guy who has a limo, and in exchange he had like a certain amount of credit with his limo company. And I was like, This is so crazy, first of all. So this massive white stretch limo that is like used for weddings and stuff picked me, a 17-year-old kid, up from a hotel on the Gold Coast to take me to the airport, which was like 45 minutes away or an hour away at this point. It was so insane. But anyway, I get in the limo and there's like a little TV on the chair in front of me. So there's like, you got the long lounges in the limo. I'm at the very back. I felt like an absolute baller. My family is not rich. We were definitely not rolling in money. It was a lot of my childhood was, a bit of a struggle actually. But he had this weird deal where he got trade with a limo company, and there I was, and I felt like a king. And there was this little TV next to me, and it was playing a music video. It was playing Ariana Grande Side to Side with Nicki Minaj, if you know that song. I know it a little too well now, and we're going to get to that. So that song was playing on the TV in front of me, and I was just on my phone, like texting people. I was sending photos and videos from inside the limo. I was like, haha, look how cool I am. I'm in a limo. And people were like, what the hell are you doing in a limo? And anyway, after a while, I noticed that the song wasn't changing. The same song and music video kept playing over and over again. And, 10 minutes went by. The song had repeated like 3 times. 15 minutes went by. It kept going. And I was starting to get like really uncomfortable. I was like, what? What is going on? Why does the same song keep playing over and over again? It was like Chinese water torture. Like the same thing just kept going and going. And I was actually starting to freak out. I was like, I think I'm going to lose my mind. Like, imagine listening to the same song on repeat that you don't even like, that it just keeps playing again and again. And I was like half an hour into this. I think it was over an hour in the end because there was traffic and I was going to, Brisbane Airport or something, or whatever it was at the time. And this song just kept replaying over and over and over again. And I could have just pressed a button and spoken to the driver and the co-driver in the front of the limo and just said, hey, could we either turn this off or just change the song? I couldn't even turn it off myself. I had to ask them to do it. But I was too scared to do that. Like, just so irrational. I'm like, why am I so scared to talk? And then, all these things have gone through my head like, oh, I've let this song go on repeat for like half an hour now. I'm going to look so stupid if I ask them to turn it off now or switch it now. They're going to be like, this weirdo's been listening to it for half an hour and now he's saying something about it. It's like all these things going through my head and I'm like so scared to talk to them. And in the end, I just listened to this damn Ariana Grande song on repeat for over an hour. And by the time I got out of that limo, I thought I'd lost my mind. I heard that song playing in my head for like the next couple of months. I can never get that song out of my head. I'm 24 now. That was 7 years ago. And that song still replays in my head because it was going for like an hour and 15 minutes in this car with the music video as well. So I now know the music video. It's ingrained into my memory. That stupid music video with Ariana and Nicki Minaj on the elliptical bikes. I cannot get that out of my head. And it just goes to show how irrational my fear of just talking to people and having what I thought were uncomfortable conversations. It led me down a path where I now am traumatized by Ariana Grande songs. Okay? Instead of just pressing a button, speaking to the driver, being like, hey, can we turn this off or at least change this because I'm sick of hearing the same damn chorus 50 times by now. But no, for some reason I was too scared to do that. And, how you do one thing is how you do everything. I was too scared to have any sort of conversation. If I was too scared to ask a driver in a limo to change a song, do you think that I was too scared to have conversations with clients that were tough? Do you think I was too scared to stick to my guns about pricing when I started my cleaning business a year later? You bet. I was a weird kid. Okay, I'm a weird adult now, but I was a weird kid. I think I'm becoming a little less weird now, but anyway, just goes to show we are not perfect. Okay, no one is perfect. No one has it all figured out, but we do pick things up along the way. We do get little puzzle pieces that we aren't really sure what they're for at the time. Like me being in that limo at 17 years old by myself, first time ever by myself in a place that I wasn't really familiar with. And I was given a puzzle piece at that time. I was like, I can just say a word and have this traumatic experience, this pain, this endless suffering. I can have it end now, but for some reason I didn't. The the pain of that music video playing over and over again for over an hour straight was somehow easier for me to handle than just speaking to someone that was driving me somewhere crazy. And so life will give you these little puzzle pieces and these little breadcrumbs that you pick up over time, and then one day it'll give you a call. And whether or not you answer that call is completely up to you. I'm a big believer in, like, you know, you get these calls throughout life that you can answer. Like, I was an athlete. I played soccer at a very high level. I played for the Joeys, which is the national team. I played for the Skillaroos, which is the state team. I played in the Perth Glory side, which is like A-League. I wasn't 18 yet, so I didn't have a professional contract. That was a calling for me. I didn't fully respond to it. My heart wasn't in it. I didn't want to do it for the rest of my life. I made that decision, moved on to other things. I missed my calling in school. I actually did pretty well in school. In my early years, I got grade skipped. And so I had an opportunity to do well in school, but I didn't respond to that call. I then responded to the call of business, but I didn't respond to the calls along the way. I didn't respond to the calls where I knew I had to assume a new identity or have an identity shift and have a perspective shift and a mindset shift and break all these false beliefs. But eventually I realized what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be, who I wanted to become. And then I answered the call. And I did the tough things. I did the uncomfortable things. And I got to a point where I became fulfilled and happy and fruitful and, you know, really, truly waking up every morning with a sense of purpose and pride in what I do, which I never would have had if I kept doing the easy thing. I just would have ended up burning out. I would have been in a place of contempt and complacency, and I probably wouldn't even be doing this today. Okay. And it all started because there were these little things along the way where I just look at myself in the mirror at the end of a day and be like, what is wrong with you? Why can't you just do these things? Why can't you just pick up the phone? Why can't you just tell a limo driver to change a damn song? Why can't you do these things? Why can't you just tell a customer what you really want to say instead of saying something and shying away because you're scared of what they might think? Okay? Every yes has a price. With every yes, you pay a price. There is a consequence to every yes and every no. But mainly with the yes. We don't want to be yes men. We want to be able to say no. We want to be able to establish authority and assert dominance in a business and professional setting and get uncomfortable, get to where we want to be, and get there faster. We don't want it to take 10, 20 years. You don't want to realize this for yourself when it's too late. It took me way longer than it should have. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for where I am now. I'm super thankful that I am where I am now. I don't mind that it's taken me 6 years to finally step out of my comfort zone and do the things I knew I had to do. But my only regret when people ask me is that I just didn't do it sooner. And I say that very vaguely. They're like, what's your regret? I'm like, I just wish I started sooner. I don't mean I wish I started my business sooner. I mean I wish I started getting uncomfortable sooner. I wish I started having that identity shift sooner. I wish I started breaking down my own false beliefs sooner. And that is the whole point of today's episode. I'm really tired of seeing these echo chambers online where people just group together and it's all like doom and gloom, and they just piggyback off of each other's failures and like, oh yeah, it's so tough out here. Oh, the market's so bad. Cost of living's too high. You can't charge these rates in Melbourne. You can't charge these rates in Sydney. Customers just suck over here. I don't want to go into commercial because of this. It's too expensive to do this. It's too expensive to advertise on here. It's, whatever. They blame anything and everything for their own failure, and they always fail to realize that it all just comes down to them. You are the catalyst for your own success. Every single person on this earth has the same amount of hours in the day. We're all on the same level playing field. And so if the market conditions were so tough, if cost of living, I'm struggling to speak tonight. If cost of living was so tough and so hard and everything sucked and the circumstances sucked and we're in a recession and there's a pandemic and, someone's in politics that we don't like. If all of this was true and it was the reason why you couldn't succeed, then why are other people around you doing exactly what you want to do and not complaining about it? Okay? Simple. I'm hoping that most people listening to this probably have an idea of this already. The people that are the victim, they have that victim complex and they blame everyone and everything around them for the circumstances that they're in. They're probably not listening to a self-help and business development podcast. They're just probably not. I think most people listening to this would have a bit more sense than that, which is what I hope. But I also hope that this speaks to you on a deeper level. And I hope that it can speak into you a a bit of wisdom and maybe just a gentle nudge or a little bit of encouragement that I wish I had years ago, because it doesn't come easy. And like I said, nothing in life and in business that's worth having, that's going to be great, is going to be easy and going to be comfortable. So the sooner you step out of your comfort zone, the sooner you get uncomfortable and do things that you deem tough right now, future you is going to be grateful for, because you're going to make your life easier by doing the harder things now. So that is the word for today. I hope you enjoyed that. It was a little bit longer than I was hoping for. I think I kind of lost my train of thought a few times in there, but I hope that this all came together and was wrapped up nicely with a little bow on top. And so thank you so much for sticking around with me. I hope that this 45-minute podcast didn't just seem like me listening to Ariana Grande side to side in a limo for over an hour. I hope that you're not traumatized and getting PTSD from hearing my voice at this point. Good news though, you can actually just switch me off at any time. You don't have to personally call my mobile and ask me to stop talking. You can just press a button and block me and be done with me. So there you go. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Self-Made today. And with that being said, get uncomfortable. Do hard things. It makes your life a lot easier in the long run, which is also why we need to have that foresight and that ability to project our vision into the future and see the outcomes and look at the fork in the road and see where each path will take you. So yeah, get uncomfortable, and I'll see you next week.